In Gregtech New Horizons, there are many lengthy and intense challenges to overcome in your journey to get the Stargate, if you're going for the Stargate. Many challenges. Dear God, what the fuck is a polytetrafluoroethylene? One of the big challenges, alongside the mobs, tech, magic, bees, resource management, NEI browsing, questing, and of course this thing, one challenge the mod forces you to overcome multiple times is power. To get through the pack, you need to power your stuff. Who would have thunk it? In this episode of my Gregtech New Horizons series, I pick up my Bible, get some wood, and join the Church of Benzene. I am Bedrock Burger, your local Silver Quill casualty copying Shahrazad kind of guy. This is part 2 of my second year of Gregtech New Horizons. If you missed year 1 or the first part, go watch them. Do it! Additionally, since I'll be editing all these parts into a big video at the end of the year, the usual, hey, I'm cutting this part when the video comes out disclaimer. You don't need to see this video's intros twice, even though you love my soothing voice. Make sure to do all the goodies that the algorithm likes, and ensure you check out membership stuff, Patreon stuff, and this cool trading card I pulled from a pack a few years ago. You didn't ask to see it, but now you have seen it. Congrats. Now, let's get into this tale of how I joined the Church of Holy Benzene. With medium voltage coming up very soon, it's time to think about power. Each voltage age requires 4 times the power of the previous age, so I definitely need to upgrade to meet the demands, especially in later ages. Right now, on the cusp of the next age, I saw 3 options presented to me: more steam power, oil power, or benzene power. These aren't the only 3 options, as there's plenty of ways to generate power in this mod pack, but these 3 were the best I could see ahead of me for this age and the next one. So let's run through each option one by one. First, steam. This isn't a bad option, actually. There is just a major problem with it. Here's the thing, steam is easy to scale up as you really just spam more and more boilers, more water production sources, and more fuel sources like coke ovens. It wouldn't be too difficult for me to ride steam all the way to EV, as there's more machines to make steam as the pack goes on. Just very resource heavy and requires a bunch of spamming. So the upsides are as such: renewable, a very clear path to scale up, and I already have existing infrastructure to support a scaling up for steam. But the main downsides, however, are it requires very resource-intense additions to production to keep up the demand of high voltage tiers, and it falls off insanely fast if you don't have the production to support your power needs. To put it into perspective, a high-pressure solar boiler, which can be made in the steam age, makes 360 steam per second. A single low-voltage steam turbine uses 1552 steam per second. Then you need 6208 steam for medium voltage, then 24,832 for high voltage. You get the idea. Railcraft tanks are very good for making a ton of steam, as a completely maxed out one makes 28,800 steam per second if my math is correct, but requires more and more fuel to run. Essentially, to run one high voltage machine, you'd need a full 4x3x3 railcraft boiler, or spam the absolute hell out of single block steam generators. Too much for too little. Another additional downside is that steam doesn't really have too many uses aside from powering machines. There is the occasional steam cracking you could do for some chemistry lines, so it's actually kind of worth it to keep some steam around, but that's about all as far as I'm aware. To summarize why I'm not going to choose steam, it's tough to scale to super high levels and doesn't provide much value outside of power generation. So the next option is oil. As an American, I love oil. Give me more oil. So much oil, all the oil, I love it. This fuel source has a lot more benefits over steam and has the most benefits of these 3 fuel sources, but also the biggest downside of the 3, which was the deal breaker for me at the time. The upsides to oil are insanely good. There are so many byproducts from just oil, so many alternate fuels from just oil as well. Light fuel, heavy fuel, diesel, gasoline, rocket fuel, and those just scratch the surface. Oil is a massive resource for the mod pack, and a normal run should have oil be used as a foundation for most chemical processes through the mod pack. Hell, I just did one myself with polyethylene. The distillation tower makes oil even better, as you can extract all byproducts from oil. There's 5 you can get from there, and they are all used in a number of chemical lines. Oil is crazy useful, but again, one glaring, unfortunate issue. The next big boon of oil is that the fuel you can make with it is excellent. Light fuel, heavy fuel, and diesel, for example, are ridiculously good for power generation, and I've actually done diesel before, and it is pretty damn good. Very small setup for it too, and big payoffs. Oil is amazing and one of the best options for power generation in the pack at this stage of the game. The major downside, however, which I touched on earlier, and frankly what made me not pick oil, is that it's not immediately renewable. It's finite in LV and in lowish supply until the fluid drilling rig in MV, which is unlocked near the end of MV. I say low supply, but it's more like,
you need to set up a small stations at every single oil spout on a 1,000 block radius to drill with a single block drill.
kinda low supply. It's less convenient and more likely to get you massacred by mobs. Not that you aren't getting killed by mobs anyways, but you get the point. I did specify not immediately renewable, as there are ways to get it to be renewable, but they take a ton of time, which I don't have with the yearly constraint. There's bees and crops. Crops in this version is really slow, and I don't have time to breed up oil berries. Trust me, I did oil berries once, not too keen on doing it again. It took way too long. As for bees, it also requires a ton of work as well to get oil bees. It's another renewable source and honestly the best way to get renewable oil, but it's too reliant on RNG for now and certain bee frames that I don't have for me to do right now. So oil was not something I was keen on doing because of the lack of renewability in my current state. So now we get to the third option, and the one I chose, benzene. The benefits are about as good as oil. There is a whole ton of byproducts when you get the distillation tower, benzene is easily scalable, and it makes a buttload of power. See, while diesel makes 480,000 EU from a single cell, benzene makes 360,000 EU. It's less, but the main draw to benzene is renewability and the lack of infrastructure required to make a ton of it. Probably the easiest to make renewable of the three, and that's why I chose it as fuel for my power in MV and beyond. Renewable, tons of byproducts later down the line, and it even has a fuel upgrade later on with nitrobenzene. The major downside to benzene, however, is that you pretty much just have benzene and nitrobenzene, and then you don't really have much higher than that. So it does kind of fall off, and you will need to swap off benzene later, unless you just decide to really go hard on nitrobenzene, which I may do. Benzene has a bit of a cult following within the Gregtech community, and after making some myself, I fully understand why. So now that you understand my choice for fuel from now on until I replace it with nitrobenzene, let's get back to the run with day 36. To get to medium voltage age, I needed some oddly rare materials, gallium and arsenic. Both have strange methods to obtain in LV, but I needed both to advance. The first thing I did to obtain the dust was make an autominer, as arsenic could be obtained by processing realgar, which was an annoyingly rare material in every ore chunk in the nether. This autominer does as it says, auto mines for me. Only one chunk though for an LV one, and it didn't have any fortune modifiers. Bare minimum, really. I could have been working on getting gallium while waiting for the autominer to work, but I kinda just sat next to the autominer and waited. Not sure why, I just did. Fortunately, I got some dust really quick and was able to put the arsenic dust and some gallium dust into my struggling EBF to make a gallium arsenide crystal. Side note, I got arsenic earlier by processing zinc, by the way. This is 2.7.4 still, so zinc is actually tough to get, only present in small ores in the overworld. No zinc gravel just yet. With the gallium arsenide crystal, I can make diodes for the next tier of circuit, the medium voltage circuit. The amount of these I'd use this year is a sin against humanity. Now I was so close to medium voltage and I just needed a few more aluminum ingots to really get there. My EBF cries for salvation and it desires proper powering. Soon, my child. Soon. Using plastic and aluminum plates, I successfully crafted an MV machine hull and entered into medium voltage, the next tier of tech within this mod pack. Sadly, no music for entering this next age yet, that comes later. Despite now being in medium voltage, I still needed an LV machine, the polarizer, to make my steel rods all magnetic and such. It also saved on redstone too, as magnetizing rods previously cost 4 redstone per, and trust me when I say you need a lot of magnetized rods. LV components take magnetized iron rods, and both MV and HV components take magnetized steel rods. Man, I can't wait for the MV extruder. With the polarizer, I got to work starting to make pieces to the pyrolyse oven. This multi-block machine was the key to make my lovely benzene, as it took wood, something I was already producing, and turned it into wood tar and charcoal, which then gets processed into benzene. More on this later. It needed 3 MV circuits, a hull, and a number of different components to make the controller itself, and each casing needed a whole heap of plates. This is before I learned how to batch craft, so it was pretty painful. To get the most out of the wood I was producing, I upgraded my farmland to garden soil, a type of soil that allowed plants to grow without water, which was very helpful for space reasons. I think it also gives a slight boost to some plants. Not sure, fact check me in the comments. This garden soil was very nice as it allowed me to start stacking my spruce bonsais on top of each other. Not yet, but later. You'd be surprised how much my base changes from day 365 of year 1 to the end of year 2. It's kinda wild. Soil all placed, I made the pyrolyse oven controller block and got to work on the casings. I also needed copper nickel coils like the EBF to run, so I'd make those over time. Speaking of the EBF, I still needed a bajillion aluminum, so now a side quest. Now that I'm an MV, there are many more ways to get aluminum, specifically alumina dust. The easiest way to get alumina dust now is through clay dust, made from macerating stained clay, which is everywhere. Stained clay that is insanely plentiful in the mesa and the mountain next to me. The only thing, however, was that I needed an MV electrolyzer. I was recommended, and I recommend this to be the first machine you make in MV, as it's a great way to accelerate your aluminum production, among other extremely useful things throughout MV. I tried to power it using the way I used to power my EBF, but it didn't work. Weirdly enough, I actually then completely forgot about the electrolyzer and went back to the pyrolyse, which is pretty normal for me. Too much to do, can't settle on one thing to gun down. At the end of day 59, saw me completing all the casings for my pyrolyse oven, and all I needed left was the coils and the hatches. I built out the oven itself, but was still missing the hatches. Copper nickel coils on the bottom center in a 3x3, oven control on the front center, input and muffler hatches on the top, output and energy hatches on the bottom facing out. I'd need more materials for it, but for now I made a combustion generator for MV to run my electrolyzer. Why combustion if I was planning on doing benzene? Simply put, I needed aluminum, which I had very little of, and could power the generator with creosote, which I had a ton of. It's the only combustion generator I make on purpose for the entire year. Powering the electrolyzer with this was not super great, but it worked. It ate up a real large amount of creosote, but it made enough alumina dust for 36 ingots, if my math was correct, within a minute. Very nice, and the other materials made from it can be used later. While a ton of clay dust processes, I decided to do some building, as my base needed some love. In the future, as a side note, I added a rule to my run where I could pause time under 2 circumstances. A, when renovating my base, or B, when AFKing to let things smelt or build up, as these things don't progress me any further, nor add new machines or tech lines to my base that I need to cover in a video. It's a weird rule, but if I continue this run without pausing for each base cleanup or mass smelting job, I'd make extremely low progress each year. Yes, I do clean up my base that many times, and you'll see what I mean with pausing time to let stuff smelt. Do you know how long it takes for 7,000 stainless steel to smelt in a quad EBF? A long time. A very, very long time. I will never cheat in items, but I will pause time to AFK and redo base layouts. Anyways, with that new rule explained, I did finish up my base, mostly on day 70, where I made an advanced fluid solidifier. The machine did exactly what it says, solidified fluids. I never did make the LV fluid solidifier, so why not do the MV? Realistically, should have made the extruder. I used this fluid solidifier to make plastic fluid pipes, and for good reason. I already established it can't be used for steam, so these plastic fluid pipes went to another purpose. Super tanks! These single block tanks could hold 4 million units of a single liquid or gas. They're made from a pulsating iron plate, some aluminum, LV circuits, and a plastic fluid pipe. I took a break to build my base some more, and on day 77 I made my first super tank. First of many, as these are kind of nutty to store fluids and gases. There are up to 5 tiers of these tanks, each one doubling in capacity as I go up in a tier. It's not as much capacity as the YOTT tank, but it's a single block, whereas the yacht tank is a multi-block. This super tank immediately went to use to replace my hydrogen storage, as that storage was filling way too fast. These super tanks have an auto void overflow mode, so any gas inserted that went above the capacity was automatically deleted. You can also lock a fluid to use it as a filter. It's good to mass store fluids and gases, as it can hold a ton. As of editing this section, I have 21 of these tanks around my base. They're just that good. Day 79 was dedicated to finally making the hatches for my pyrolyze. Input, output, maintenance, you get the idea. It was almost all together, but actually making benzene is still a bit off. And now day 81. The pyrolyze was all complete and ready to power. To hold all the benzene I've been making, I wouldn't use a super tank, but instead I use a multi-block iron tank, as iron was plentiful and I enjoy gigantic sexy tanks holding my fluids I create. To help my progress out and save materials, I started to work on a circuit assembler. I needed a total of 5 circuits to make, 2 HV and 3 LV. This machine is a necessity for saving materials, as it allows new recipes for circuits. Right now, to make an MV circuit, it requires 3 low voltage circuits to make 1 MV circuit. With the circuit assembler, not only were LV circuits cheaper, cutting out the red alloy cables and steel plates, but the MV circuits were cut down to requiring only 2 LV circuits. To put into perspective, a stack of MV circuits goes from 3 stacks of LV circuits to only 2 stacks of LV circuits to make. A very good cost saver, and as a Publix employee outside of content creation, I love saving materials. As I got to working on it, a loot bag from something gave me a crossbow. Honestly, a very good crossbow. When I do Twilight progression in the next section of this video, you'll see how nutty it is, and with the bolts I make to go with it, even better. Anyways, on day 89 I completed the circuit assembler, and dear lord I regret not making this earlier. You'd think that the small savings of making LV circuits wouldn't amount to much, but that's a stack of steel, 2 stacks of rubber, and half a stack of red alloy saved per stack of LV circuits. Sometimes I'm a silly goose, and this is one such example, not making this machine ASAP. Back to benzene work now. I needed a ton of other machines to turn the charcoal and wood tar that the pyrolyze produced into good old benzene. The machines I needed was 2 MV distilleries and 8 LV fluid extractors, and gas turbines to power them. Totally didn't steal this design from a Gregtech content creator, no sir. Anyways, the design I stole from a Gregtech content creator on my mind, I got to work. The only thing though, the design I totally didn't steal had math built for charcoal produced by the Infernal Coke oven, not the pyrolyze oven. So I made way too many fluid extractors, but just the right amount of distilleries. By the way, the design I used was made by CWG in his own Gregtech run, so go watch that video, link in description. After adding more to the iron storage tank, I decided to turn on the pyrolyze oven to... Right. Even though it's an MV multi-block, you still can't put MV power into LV hatches. Good work, Burger. Thank Greg for backups though. Explosion count number 2. Back to work. On day 99, I made 2 new MV gas turbines to power the distilleries in my benzene automation. We're so close, I can taste the delicious benzene already. The 8 fluid extractors took quite some time though, as it was technically 12 machines total, 8 fluid extractors and 4 gas turbines. So many circuits is a good thing I made the circuit assembler. To help with reducing the chance for another explosion, I made a transformer, which could turn MV power into LV power. 1 amp, or 1 generator's worth of power, could be stepped down into 4 amps, or 4 machines worth of LV power. I didn't really understand it for a bit, but I figured it out. If only there was a quest detailing how it works. I hooked it up to the pyrolyze, and it actually worked for once. No explosion, hallelujah. On day 109, I finally finished up the fluid extractors and started connecting a bunch of pipes around. And now, to explain how all this works. About time, am I right? This whole process starts with wood, gathered from a crop manager. wood gets sent into the pyrolysis oven, where it is turned into two things, coal and wood tar. The wood tar goes right into the distilleries to be turned directly into benzene itself. The charcoal goes into the fluid extractors and turned into wood tar, which then gets sent to the distilleries to also be made into benzene. I output the benzene at a specific spot so it loops back to the gas turbines, making this whole setup self-sustainable and renewable. On day 110, a full third almost into the year, I turn on the pyrolysis and let it ride. I did have to jumpstart a bit, throwing charcoal into fluid extractors and spare benzene from reservoir into the gas turbines, but it was making benzene, and after a bit I could leave it all alone. At this point, I AFK'd for a bit, letting the benzene build up, pausing the daylight cycle, and sitting still. This was also so I could really ensure that my benzene was fully renewable, which it was. I then also updated my game to version 2.8.4, the most recent update as of editing this section, and also swapped to use the Prism launcher for this pack, which, side note, if you're using anything but the Prism launcher for Gregtech New Horizons, you should fix that. Use Prism. I also did an extension to my base to add a massive room for future multi-blocks, of which there are many multi-blocks. So many. To loop it all back to why I was making benzene in the first place, it was for the good old EBF, which was struggling massively since it was built. This run could have been a lot different if I had known that it was a pipe issue rather than a power issue. I did the same trick with the EBF as I did with the pyrolysis, using just one MV gas turbine and a transformer. No explosions, fortunately. The EBF was back in action with a new power source, and it ran perfectly once I realized the transformer was backwards. Finally, my EBF could withstand the major test of MV, which was, can you run the EBF non-stop? No, seriously, you have to cook up so much with the EBF in this stage. It's kind of insane. Now that the EBF was able to run without stopping, I took a long break from this mod pack. You viewers don't see it, but I took a super long break after this, almost 2 months. During this break though, I formed a plan for the rest of the run, and the next section is dedicated to a bit of a side project, Thaumcraft, one of the biggest and most important magic mods in this pack. But that will have to wait for next episode. As per usual, a full benzene tutorial will follow this video. I hope you all stay tuned for it. Make sure to tune into my live streams, you get sneak peeks of the run. Currently I'm on day 285 as of this video, trying to rush to the moon. Thank you all for coming and watching. See you all next time. Bedrock Burger, out.